Hi, this is Penny Z, librarian from the Cascade Branch. It is Tuesday night. It's 6:30, so it's time for what we're reading. Tonight, I don't know how I managed it, but I have Catherine Behrendt tonight from WZZM to tell us all what she is reading. Catherine, how are you and what are you reading?
I am well. Thank you for asking, and thank you for inviting me. This is so much fun. And see, you've been doing this whole virtual thing long before we had to, I guess, in our lives, right? But I am reading The Glass Castle by Jeanette Walls, and I understand that it's one of the more popular books at the library.
Perpetually, always. But I have to confess, I haven't read it.
I know I'm going to try to, by the time this is over, I'm going to try to have you, checking out that book so that it is a wonderful story. It's a memoir by Jeanette Walls, and I've not read any of her other books, but I am inspired to check them out. And it is the story of her childhood and her life with her siblings and her parents, who suffered mental illness and addiction. And it's an amazing story, and the timing on it could not be more perfect.
Really? Why?
Because thinking about what's going on out in the world, I have a window right next to me, so I gesture out the window, out in the world with regard to the pandemic. A couple of different things. Research is showing, and we're finding out as every day goes by during this pandemic, that people with mental illness are especially suffering during this time. That the loneliness and the being closed off and locked up and avoiding people and changing our life patterns, all of those things are particularly difficult for people with mental illness, and it's presenting itself in a variety of ways. In ways that Jeanette Walls' parents suffered in her life story. So I thought that was particularly timely, and also for the children of people with mental illness living in that life in general. But then there's a lot of concern from the experts about kids who are homeschooling, learning virtually right now. In homes where there are challenges like substance abuse or mental illness. School is, for a lot of children, an escape. That's how they get away and have a little bit of a sense of normalcy and structure maybe around them. But during COVID, a lot of children are not able to do that, and certainly during the lockdown period. And they were suffering that experience. But I also heard about a lot of parents who tried to create this sort of fantastical experience for their children, so they never really had to know what was going on with COVID. Don't watch the news and just make it this wonderful experience. And this is what Jeanette Walls' parents tried to do with her childhood. Is to create this fantastical life. She never knew how poor she was. She never knew that her parents were, in the throes of all of the things that they were suffering. She didn't know a Christmas where you got 1,000 toys under the tree. Her dad told her he bought her a planet, that the planet in the sky was for her for Christmas, he had blown all the family money. He couldn't have bought her anything because he spent every dime that came in that house. But he told her that, I can't remember if it was Venus. I don't remember what one it was, but it was for her for Christmas. Imagine thinking that you're yeah. So it was a childhood that she kind of remembers with fondness, but of course, as an adult, recognizes how terribly dysfunctional it was. So there is this mix in the way that she tells the story. And the part about the glass castle is that was her father's dream. They were always, everything he was doing was to one day allow him to find that perfect place to build a glass castle for his family. And, he loved his family despite how much he struggled and how much he did the wrong thing. His wife, her mother, was able to sometimes work, but she was, she would bring home a paycheck and he would spend it. So they were always in debt. They were always doing the boot scoot. They would always have to leave and go to the next place and come up with a scheme to stay there. And then they inherited a place, and they, through the death of a family member, and it was ramshackle. She would describe the living conditions that were crazy. So there was no permanence and no structure. And that was what I really kind of compared. I thought a lot about the kids right today dealing with this pandemic.
Yeah, no, I've had a lot of people tell me you have to read this book, and I've seen a lot of people check it out at the library. It's perpetually popular, and people are always asking for it. What kind of held me back when people say, read Glass Castle, is it seems like it was so bleak. Childhood misery is something that I have a hard time reading about, but you're saying it's not really, the book itself isn't like that, though.
Well, you and I reading the book, if
Right.
we have functional childhoods, of course we see it as misery. But what Jeanette Walls kind of describes is this, yes, they knew they were constantly on the run. Yes, she knew her father drank too much, and they were always losing all their money and stuff. I mean, they knew this. She had to protect her siblings in ways that most children don't have to do, hopefully. So there was this recognition of it, but they loved their parents. And because they created this other out of this world kind of experience for them, there was joy too, Don't let that stop you from reading it.
I'm going to have to read it now. Catherine Behrendt told me I have to read it. I'm going to have to read it. So, you want me to tell you about my book now?
Sure.
Because it's amazing the parallels here. I'm reading Deacon King Kong by James McBride. It's new this year. It is about, James McBride grew up in the projects in New York in the late 60s. The book takes place in 69. In the projects, he made up kind of a fictionalized project called The Cause Houses. And the book is all about the characters that he knew or that are in these cause houses. And it keeps going from one point of view to another point of view of these different people. And he is such a great writer that he just meshes them all together so that they're interconnected and intertwined, and you're following all these plots. And they've got these great nicknames. Like Deacon King Kong is a nickname. He is a deacon at 5 Points Baptist Church. And he drinks this White Lightning moonshine that's nicknamed King Kong. I mean, he drinks it all the time. So he is Deacon King Kong. And he talks to his wife, who passed away a few years ago, but he still argues with her constantly about where she put the Christmas Club money. And so Deacon is a very sweethearted alcoholic who's someone else, another character in the book says, is the only happy person that he knows in the project. He's just always happy. But I'm getting that kind of vibe from the book too, finding joy where you are. And it feels like the characters there in the cause houses are doing that too. Deacon started a baseball team. When the book starts, he's past doing that, but he always remembers it. So his cause housing plays against another housing project, and he was the umpire and the coach of the cause houses. And he tells them stories about the old Negro Leagues, and he finds kids with a lot of talent, and they're out there, and just great stories, so great to listen to. But the book starts with Deacon. He actually shoots someone, which is completely out of character for him. Everyone is shocked. He shoots the worst drug dealer in the project, whose name is Dean Clement. And he just walks right up to him. No one's expecting anything from Deacon King Kong, who has another nickname. They also call him Sport Coat, because he's always wearing a sport coat. And Sport Coat just walks up to the local bad drug dealer and just shoots him.
Wow.
He gets his ear off. He doesn't die. People think right away that and that just causes ripples And then you get that from all the different perspectives. You find out that Dean's used to be sport coach, best player. He was actually being scouted by colleges. And now he's a drug dealer. And all these other connections, like there's a mobster who's a couple streets over, and he hears about it. And then he kind of gets in. And then the church lady, who is the choir director, and she's the one everybody goes to for advice. She knows everything. And a detective comes in and wants to talk to her about it. And Deacon has a son who they call Pudgy Fingers, who's slow, probably maybe Down syndrome, but getting him out of the way so he doesn't hear about this. I mean, it's just all these characters. It's just a fabulous universe. I haven't finished it yet, but I am enjoying just being in this universe. And here, for me, I mean, you brought, Catherine, a nonfiction book, but I'm a fiction fanatic because I feel like I learn about people most by hearing their stories, especially the story from inside their head.
Yeah.
And this is not one person, but this is James McBride's story to tell through this story, which he does just such a great job at.
Sounds like there are a lot of characters. Do you ever write, because I've done this, a cheat sheet where I write all the characters as I'm meeting them in the book so that I can go, okay, wait, you have a cheat sheet. Good. That's what I do too.
Especially with all these nicknames. I'm like, okay.
Oh my gosh, that's double the characters.
It feels like the police officer comes in and asks for someone, and he says, do you know where Marty McOwens is or something? And nobody knows who that is. And you find out later it's one of the characters, but nobody's called him that in a million years.
Yeah.
In fact, two of the characters share one driver's license.
Oh gosh.
Whenever they need it, they just have it for the day.
Uh-huh. Oh my goodness.
If they don't want to go to the DMV and get, I'll just get one and then we'll share it.
Do you, a book like that, I'd have to be upright to read, but I love to read in bed. Where do you do most of your reading?
I do. I read in bed, and I'm going to admit this. I read on this baby.
Oh, you do?
This is a Kindle.
Yeah.
And I was so happy that KDL went back to Overdrive. So I can check out books on my Libby app and put it on my Kindle again. And I read that in bed because it's got the great, the lighting and the way they do it. So it's like paper is amazing. Well,
I love holding the book. I love turning the pages. I love everything about a book. So I've tried reading on an e-reader or whatever, but it doesn't work for me. But reading in bed, no matter how good the book is, I'm usually awakened by it falling on my face because then I know it's time to put it away. And sometimes though, when I'm reading a book like that one, I'll have to go back and reread, to kind of remind myself who everybody is and everything.
Well, my eyes are so bad, you can tell by my big old Coke bottle glasses. If I read a print, it has to be one of these, which is large print.
Yeah.
And the problem with these falling on you, this one's not too bad, but some of them are extremely big and heavy.
That's good.
I can make the font really big on my Kindle.
Oh, that's true. That I like. Yeah.
And Catherine told me that we didn't have to go over all of the wonderful things she does for this community when introducing her, but I just have to say, you find out so much just talking about what people read, but just finding out the background for me before I talk to them. You're doing such great things with so many great organizations. And Catherine also does a great job hosting our literary libations every year. Mm-hmm. So if you have not joined us, Catherine, are you going to be doing that next year?
I hope they'll ask me. I don't know, from one year to the next, whether I've been booted.
Catherine is host. Tell everybody what literary libations is, just in case they don't know.
It's really a terrific fundraiser event for KDL. And what they do is they select a number of authors. They've done, I think, up to 6, but they did 4 this year. 4. Anyway, and they invite the authors usually to come in person. This year was virtual, as we're doing everything. And they do a book talk, and they talk about, what motivated them, what the story is really about, or just what their technique for writing and how they like to their ideas. The book talks are really interesting. And sometimes I'll look at the list and I'll go, I'd read that one. Maybe that's not in my wheelhouse. But then when you hear the book talk, you say, I got to read that. It's, writers are interesting people.
They are, and they're usually great teachers.
Yes, yeah, they have the courage to take an idea and put it out there for the whole world to see, and it's I admire that. And so at this event, Literary Libations, this year, what they did was so cool. They had the guests from their homes coming in via, like we're doing, but so people who attended paid, and then they got to pick what local restaurant they wanted to go to and pick up their dinner and a bottle of wine, and they could bring that home and sit and eat their dinner and watch the event on their laptop or whatever. And it was really clever and super well done, even though, it wasn't what they expected to be in some ballroom somewhere, seeing each other.
To be able to come this year, and you were fabulous too. You made it so special. So
it's a testament to the work that KDL does in the community, and the importance of our local libraries, that they could have an event like that, still, generate the kind of revenue that they were hoping to with a live event, because some people could be turned off. It didn't happen. It really was a wonderful success, and so that was cool. I love KDL. I'm waiting for an invitation, though, to ride in the bookmobile.
Oh, I haven't been inside that either yet.
Oh my gosh. Well, when I was a child, I rode my bike every Wednesday. The bookmobile came to our neighborhood, and we would ride our bikes, and go check out the full limit of the books that you could put under your arms and ride home on your bike. And I remember what it smelled like. I remember the big steps you had to climb to get up inside, and the little library card with the metal plate that had my number on it that they ran through the thing. Oh my, I remember everything about that bookmobile. And when I heard KDL was getting a bookmobile, I was overjoyed.
I think we got to make that happen. We got to put Catherine on the bookmobile.
Don't you think that would be to just roll into some neighborhood and get kids
on the bookmobile? Yes, I think that would be fabulous. I'm going to push that up the chain a little bit.
Please do.
Well, you were such a delight. I'm so glad you agreed to come on the show. Thank you to whatever bribe you got from anyone at KDL. I appreciate it.
Well, it was super nice to be asked, and I hope people will check out the Glass Castle. I hope it's not too hard to get at your branches, from what I'm hearing about its popularity. But it's really timely if you want it to be, but also just a lovely story about a dysfunctional family. And well, that was weird, wasn't it?
To some extent. Yeah. Next week we have a couple of people who run DisArt, which is art made by people with disabilities.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, I'm really excited to hear about that. They're going to talk about some books that are helpful to understanding and empathy for people, so that's going to be fabulous. So join us next Tuesday at 6:30. Catherine, thanks again.
Thank you for having me.
Good night.
Night.